The reason why I master from stems is because clients get a mix to a point. They can only get the mix to a certain point. They can only get it so far. And where they want to take it in mastering and where the mix has ended, I can hear clear deficiencies. I can clear things which are objective and can be fixed with access to the stems. And this is why I'm going to present you with 10 rules to follow for stem mastering so you can respect the hell out of the stereo mix. Because as soon as you don't do that, all bets are off. You're not stem mastering anymore. You're becoming a mixing engineer. And I guarantee you, your client is going to be kicking your ass for changing their mix 360 or 180 in a completely different direction. Now, before we get into this juice, what I want you to do is make sure you subscribe to the best newsletter for working audio pros. And with that, let's get into it. So, rule number 1, the stereo mix is king. Okay, so you get your stems. The clients send you the stems. You make sure they send you the stereo mix that they listened to and they signed off on. Okay, so you've got stems, stereo mix. You null test them. You A/B test them. You make sure everything lines up. There's nothing missing. And creatively, it's hitting the same vibe and juice. You enter your mastering session. Beautiful. You've got your stems laid out. In a compare channel, you have the stereo version. You start mastering. You know where you start mastering from? You don't start going through each individual stem. You start mastering from the stereo bus. Okay? Because you want that 2-track to work. You want that original mix to work. And you try as hard as you can, but you know that you're working from stems because there's certain deficiencies. It might be a resonance in a kick drum, a vocal sibilance, a weird kick drum pattern that's flamming. So I don't know. I'm just giving some hypotheticals there. You take the stereo one as far as you can, and then you hit a wall with something, a particular element. That's when you go to the stems. And when you go to the stems to address that particular element, you gain stage. You do an EQ boost, you add some compression, you do whatever, you gain stage so the level, the overall balance maintains that stereo mix. But there are some exceptions for this, okay? Because we're going to be still listening critically as a mastering engineer to make sure that the presentation is its absolute best and holds the integrity and intent of that stereo mix. So I've got some notes here. First thing, once you get into stem land, are any audible artifacts present? Now, this is the beauty of stems. When you're working from a stereo master, a lot of artifacts get hidden and sort of blended in the back. And sometimes they can be really hard to pick out. But when you've got the stems, there's no hiding. Lip smacks, bad breaths, poor edits, guitar buzzers. Yep, you're now responsible, okay? Even if you can't hear it in the stereo mix, it's a duty of care that you don't leave any stone unturned. You listen through the whole shebanger and you go, wait a second. I can't hear that guitar buzz in the stereo mix, but it's there and I can hear it on the stem. I'm going to address that. And damn well you should, because any artifacts that can slip through, even though you don't hear it on your system or you might not hear it on your headphones, it might be playing on somebody else's system and they will hear it. So you have your duty of care to manage any artifacts you get on any of those stems. That was number 1. Number 2, low end translation, your kick and your bass. Got to be careful here. This isn't a call to action so you start rebalancing the whole mix. But it is a call to action that if your client's intentions with the final master and one of their notes was, I want the low end to hit. Well, guess what? Take a listen to the kick. Take a listen to the bass. How are the fundamentals lining up? Is one much louder than the other? Is one much softer than the other? Have that discussion maybe before you hit mastering with your client to go, hey, do you mind if I balance the low end here just to get it hitting the way you want to based on the reference you sent me? Okay, it's a duty of care. It's just crossing your T's, dotting your I's. You want to go through these processes with them to make sure you smack it out of the park. The next one is the low frequency to top line balance. This one is really important, okay? And this is something that I garnered through experience through Matthew Weiss's pop mix through. This was like 7 years ago. And when he starts his pop mixes, we're still talking about stem mastering, but I'm getting to a point here. He starts with the low end and the vocals, because they're the two main elements in contemporary music that drive a song. So if you get the stems and the vocals are drowned out, and the client said, in the master, we want the vocals to be clear, then you have perfect agency and autonomy to just bring those vocals up a decibel or 2. And this isn't mixing. People are going, that's mixing. It's not mixing. You know why? So many mixing engineers for mastering will send me multiple versions of the main mix with the vocal up and down. So that way I have autonomy to make, to pick. Do I want the vocal up in the chorus, the vocal down in the verse? How do I want to arrange this? And they give me that autonomy. So it's not mixing. It's just taking the intent of the artist for mastering, and working with the tools you got. And you've got the vocal, you've got the mix there, and you can bring the vocal up or down. Who's to tell you different? What do we got next? Oh, this one's a big one. Okay. It's typically these mixes that come in for stereo mastering. I've got my notes here. Not stereo. They're typically these sort of mixes that come in for stem mastering, and those are mixes with really poorly balanced mid-range. Okay, so either it's really abrasive in the upper mids and really shrill, and they're struggling to get their mixes loud because it's just all this energy in the upper mids, or it's very boomy and lots of low mids and not lots of clarity. Here again, mastering isn't just like a McDonald's process. You got to speak with your clients, and when you speak with your clients, if they've got an intent to create clarity in the mid-range or to create warmth in the mid-range, use the stems to achieve that. Do not change the intent of the stems in that process, but consider, the vocals are sitting in the upper mids, and the guitars, they've got a huge boost in the upper mids too. Well, what happens if we bring the guitars down a little bit there, but then boost their low mids so we get a little bit of that fundamental energy coming through from them? Fair enough. Again, that is based on a conversation you have with your client. And no, it is not mixing. I do not consider that mixing. I consider that creative thinking in mastering to go, okay, how do we make this translate as best as possible? Next, with that vocal sibilance, okay, when we're talking about vocals, where they're placed, if they're a bit shrill, vocal sibilance is much better dealt with in stem mastering than it is in stereo mastering. Granted, I prefer mastering stereo tracks, really well mixed stereo tracks, but we have to master from stems sometimes, and sometimes it is a benefit to the end record because vocal sibilance is a killer. And especially when you're doing it on a stereo master, all your transients in the snares and everything else, all that sort of air in other elements can get sucked in a really weird way when there's excessive sibilance to deal with in a stereo master. So, stem mastering, thumbs up for sibilance. Ooh, yep. This is a fun one. Now, this is a nice little lever, okay? A little trick, a little lever if you're working with stems for mastering. So typically in a stereo master, something's a bit too dull. What do? We boost the top end. Fair game, okay? Fair game here. In a stem mastering session, let's say the top end is pretty good across the board, but it's just not poking or bright enough. I know this goes against some rules, but I do this in sessions. I'll bring the top end of the drums out where the hi-hats are, because it's a nice equalizer to bring energy and brilliance and shine to a track that isn't abrasive, and it's nice and clean and staccato, and opens up the track without actually making everything harsh or throwing the balance out too far, because hi-hats, hi-hats above 10k, a little bit more energy up there, doesn't really affect the mid-range too much, or the rest of the mix, and it's a nice little, master stroke, so to speak. It's a bit funny terminology, to get everything nice and open, to have that nice open tone. What's next on my list? That was it. So that was it. Those are my notes. Okay, so if I'm mastering from stems, I'm thinking about these things, and you need to think about them in this way. A sort of cadence and rhythm to a lot of what I discussed there was, what's the client's intention? What does the client think? What have they asked for? Where are they trying to go with it? Have you consulted it on them? And if you do that, you're covering your bases. You're going to have a great sounding master at the end. If you just, and I know there are some people watching who have shot themselves in the foot like this. If you just take the stems, fuck off, go do whatever the fuck you want to do, and then send it back to the client, guess what? I guarantee there are people watching this that have been kicked in the ass from their client saying, this sounds nothing like what I was after. I prefer my original. They got that demo-itis. Fair enough. That's, that is completely fair game. But anyway, I'm going to leave you with these notes. So have a think about what I said. Leave your comments in the section below if you've got any other thoughts to add. And yeah, until next time, take care.